60 Miles from Anywhere. Today's dispatch is about writing, specifically some thoughts that I wanted to share with you about the editing process. Editing is the shadow of all good writing. Good editing makes for great writing. It's impossible to have good writing without any editing at all, much as I dislike the process of doing it. If you like this episode, please check out my website, 60milesfromanywhere.com, where you'll find more stories on my blog as well as insights about creative writing. My fiction is available on Amazon.com, and you can find the link on my website, 60milesfromanywhere.com. The book is called Song of the Cinder, and it is available in both trade paperback and ebook for Kindle as well. It would make a great holiday or birthday present to that lover of fantasy, alternate history, or horror in your life. Your donation to support this podcast and my website are always appreciated with my Buy Me a Coffee link. Be sure to leave a rating or a comment on the platform you're subscribed to for this podcast. Ratings and comments help improve my rankings on platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and many others. I'm also an affiliate with Origin USA, a company that makes boots, jeans, martial arts gear, and all sorts of other things 100% American-made. Click the link on my website and use code Harris10 for 10% off your next purchase. I've been wearing my American Bison boots for nearly 2 years, and I never leave home without them. I put them through things that would chew up lesser boots, from climbing up the side of a mountain to walking several miles a day in a European city. They work great on the trail, and if you polish them up, they look nice enough to wear to a restaurant for dinner. So let's begin with today's episode. Editing is the worst. There's nothing like an afternoon of writing when you're just in the zone. You feel like your mind and body detach and only the story exists. Your eyes are open only to catch the typos as your fingers rattle across the keyboard. The ideas and words are weaponized, dropping into place and exploding in bright flashes of narrative grace. Like watching a ballet or a prize fight. And when you come back into your body after feeling the universe shift around you, you might feel good enough to sleep for once, having fulfilled your obligation to the muse. Your tab is settled. The beast of the story, satiated for once and snoring in its pile of bones from prior victims, surrounded with its treasure. Then the next time you visit this bit of writing, it might be the next day, or it might be a year later. And what you thought was a symphony turns out to be a kazoo band of a bunch of third graders on a Kool-Aid bender. That flash of brilliance looks like that crayon drawing your mom puts up on the fridge, crinkled and puckered with whatever falls out of the freezer, until she has the decency to use the magnets to hold up a shopping list or receipts and lets the drawing slip into the trash, finally laid to rest with the coffee grounds and eggshells. As much as I would love to be like the famous writers and just deliver my steaming pile of manuscript to an editor's door for them to sort out, I can't. Most of us can't. Like death and taxes, editing is an eventuality. You have to wade into that bombed-out porta-potty of manuscript and go elbow deep into whatever overwritten, self-indulgent diarrhea you left in there. Editing is hard work. Writing is much like a fancy dinner when you start off with the dessert first. The writing bit is exciting. You're creating something out of nothing. You feel things come together, and in your imagination everything is fleshed out and new and beautiful. Editing is taking all of that beautiful work and inspiration and pouring through it for its flaws. Every little misspelled word, subject, verb agreement, wordiness, active voice, passive voice, point of view consistency, verb tense, grammar, when to use good grammar and when to break the rules for effect. It's all there. It's the bit where you're just looking for everything wrong with the story that kills me. It didn't feel this clumsy the first go-around, then you start to second-guess everything. By your fourth or fifth go-around, you almost hate the story. I use Scrivener for my writing, and each draft uses a different color. I write in black type, then red, then blue, and with each draft I use a different color. Eventually the page only has a few words in black, and all the rest is a bleeding rainbow of colors. It doesn't even show what I've cut out. At the final draft, I switch everything back to black, and read it through one last time. That's a lie. You read it through about 10 more times. Sometimes there are more changes. Sometimes it just flows and it feels light, but packed right all the same. On that draft, I can read it out loud and not stumble. My tongue doesn't struggle with the cadence or the rhythm. The rough patches are smoothed out and sanded down, painted over. It's like a fine piece of furniture. The copy I write for companies usually just gets a first draft treatment with a read-through in my head. I run it through a spell checker. I usually don't have any problems selling this kind of thing either. My nightmare edit in most cases is when a client requests that I remove all double spaces after periods. Whoever changed that rule should be taken out and shot. How many hours so many of us spent working that double tap into our muscle memory, only for some asshole to come around 30 years later and tell us it's no longer necessary. That's not editing anyway, that's just proofreading. Real editing, in my opinion, comes from taking the raw material of a story, reading through it, and seeing that thread of truth that the author was trying to convey. A good editor is like a good navigator. They can look at the lay of the land and tell you the more direct route to go without sacrificing much of the scenery. They understand how a story will benefit from change in structure, or how much of the story needs to be expounded upon, and how much of it can be left to the reader's imagination. They give the reader a lot more credit than the author does, and somehow a good editor can say, "I think what you're really trying to say is this," and they'll be right. I don't know how they get past that fog of just seeing something for its flaws, but a well-edited book or story never feels too long to read. It's a rich and nuanced, delicate, but also potent thing. On the other hand, a bad editor can make changes and cuts and staunch the gaping wounds with the sterile gauze of cliches, throwaway sentences, and filler. Then they get cranky if you object to these changes. Sometimes an editor will just make these changes without talking to you first about it. Collaboration usually means that something even better can be found somewhere in the middle. When you edit for yourself, you get a feel for what you really want. You still get that control. I've noticed that since I've started making these podcasts, I'm more critical of my word choice and the rhythm of the sentences as they're read aloud. Every comma represents a pause. Every em-dash or parentheses changes my pacing and even my pitch. Some words look fine together on the page, but when you read them out loud, they bunch up. They don't flow. Sometimes my phrases seem heavy, stilted, or flat out corny. Speaking the words has helped a lot of my editing process. When I edit my own stuff, I have a tendency to start throwing things out, like an episode of Hoarders. I return to my story with an almost resentful attitude. The guy in those old commercials waking up at 2 a.m. to make the donuts. The cubicle drone shuffling off to their gray-walled tomb of co-workers. But sometimes I'm in it and I feel that electricity, the same as I would with writing. I start to see how changing a word or a phrase can shift things around and make them clearer. You start to see the extra words slough off and you don't even miss them on the next pass. Right now I'm editing my book, which clocked in at much longer than I expected. Some word counts on Scrivener put it at over 1,000 pages. Every time I sit down to edit, I just feel like I'm chiseling away at the base of a pyramid. I'm not even through my first pass yet. The first third of the story has a first draft, and I just finished the second. The good news is once I get my legs and my voice in this story, the writing has improved. But now I also have continuity and consistency of voice to consider, and that will come in later drafts. It is so hard to be motivated enough to go through this story over and over again, especially since I'm not even getting paid to do it. The hope is that I can make a book, or 3, that is worthy of someone giving me their money to read it. Right now I would probably have to pay them. It's rough, it's clumsy, it's amateurish. There's a lot of pain in it, too, that I have to relive with every pass, so it's not a pleasant experience. There's a saying to not compare your rough draft with somebody else's finished story. When you edit, you're doing both. You're comparing an onion skin system of layers upon layers. About halfway through, though, You realize you hate all of them. But then when things start to come out clean and honest, you start to feel better about the process. But it can be a bit like pulling teeth. And unlike the exciting moment of creating the story and putting the words down and making progress, you're left with the cleanup. Sort of like cooking. Everybody wants to cook and eat, but nobody wants to do the dishes. With time management, I try to divide my time between editing and writing. Even if the writing is for something else, like scripting out a new podcast episode, submitting an article to a publication, a pitch letter, or a blog post, I'm happy as long as I can keep creating. I tend to get hyper-focused on the editing, and a week of solid editing can really wear you out. It becomes tedious, but also you get sucked into doing it, and the creativity inside starts to atrophy. Right now, editing is a necessary evil, as much as I would love to just hand my manuscript off to somebody else to make it perfect. Wouldn't that be nice? The world doesn't work like that, however. The best I can hope for is to have someone read it, tell me if they liked it, what they didn't understand, and what they did. And then try to build on that and reinforce all the good stuff and cut away the bad. Honestly, the best editing is the threat of somebody else reading your work. Anytime I've had someone offer, I go through it a couple of times and notice all the problems I didn't see before. It's a lot like having an open house and noticing all the things you missed when you were picking up. It keeps you honest, even if you're sick of reading through the same mess over and over again. Editing is tough, too, because like I said before, nobody is paying me to do it. The incentive to do it is low because it just feels like you're screwing around. Maybe one of the worst things to happen to our civilization is putting a price tag on our time. People stop doing art unless it's going to give them something back, usually money. Sometimes doing the work is its own reward, and I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true. Telling a story about people who don't exist must be about the biggest waste of time there is. It's not plowing a field, it's not fixing a valve in someone's heart. I think that guilt of productivity is why Americans turned fairy tales into these ham-fisted morality plays. We couldn't just be entertained and puzzle out the meaning. We had to have some sort of moral lesson driven into our skulls at the end of it so people could justify wasting their time reading or watching something. The truth is, most of the stories we tell have meaning. And like the human experience, the meaning is a lot more complex than cheaters never win or don't judge somebody by their appearances. Editing can help you bring that out or conceal it like a rock in a snowball. So it's a lot more than just knowing to not end sentences with a preposition or starting a sentence with a conjunction. Today I reached a milestone. On my book project, I finished the second draft of the first 1/3 of the story. The good news is the further I went, the easier it got. I started to notice the topography of the story and what's important, and what I had already said, and what I could leave to the understanding of the reader. I'm ready to take on the next piece of this story and stop second-guessing myself. Today, I felt there was actually something in there, and I hope to be able to share it with everyone very, very soon. This has been my 7th episode of the podcast, and I hope everybody is enjoying it so far. It's been a lot of fun, and a lot of challenges have come my way in trying to make this and produce this. The whole thing has been a trip because I'm writing it, producing it, and recording it myself. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.